It is said that the greatest heroes of the Night Morpher Order have purified their embers into untainted light. But few dare speak of what becomes of the darkness that is expunged from these chivalrous heroes. For when the ember of darkness is set free, neither good nor evil will be safe from its goal of total annihilation.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus here with a review of The Night Morpher Annihilator by Mastermind Creations. This is a redeco and mass physical improvement over the Night Morpher Commander that released earlier this year. The color scheme of the Annihilator is also far more grounded in realism, at least I think so. I'm not a train expert, but as cool as it is to have a locomotive in Optimus Prime colors, it's barely a disguise. This guy is black with copper and brass. Maybe the red stuff up front is distracting, but really I think that this guy's color scheme helps him not only look a bit more realistic, but this way you can actually have him blend in decently with some of the more realistic vehicles of late in the proper Transformers line. This means I think this guy has more of a place on a Classics Generations Universe Henkei United shelf. But all that aside, let's do a comparison to a toy that none of you own. I like Stealth Force. Okay, anyway, here's the Night Morpher Commander. As you can see, there's a huge night and day difference between how these guys look. And while the color palette of the Annihilator is far less varied than the Commander's, the detailing of the Annihilator is a bit superior in my opinion. The Commander has more large patches of color, whereas the Annihilator is a big black sheen with a lot more bits and pieces picked out in metal. I really like the rings up here. The Annihilator also comes with some track, which is new to this box. It's a little bit soft plastic, but quite easy to plug together after you get over how scary it is to shove the things in place. It's a tight connection afterwards, and I've been able to pull it apart a few times without anything coming apart. My favorite bit of this is actually the fact that the planks have sculpting on them to make them look like real wood. The tracks are sized nicely for the wheels of the train mode to fit inside the rails and move forward and backward and forward and backward and forward and backward. The only downside is that you only get 2 pieces of track, so if you want to have an epic chase sequence with both Night Morphers, you're gonna end up with this, which doesn't really look all that chasey. In fact, it looks a little bit intimate. I don't know if I mind. Also, since they're basically the same mold, you can finally use the Night Morphers' hitching component, so you can connect them back to back, and then play Tug of War. Hooray! Annihilator's cargo also opens up just like the Commander's, revealing a similar mortar cannon and a thing down there. I wonder what that is.
I'll fell this villain, and wait! No! It cannot be! See before you the shadow of what you once desired, the power you surrendered for the sake of false purity. Bear witness to your end. Anguish is my creed, and destruction is my knighthood. I am become, in body and mind, ember and objective, Annihilator.
The Annihilator's robot mode drips with sinister awesome. Again, he's kind of a blank slate of pure black with bits of copper and brass, but it's the red details in the chest and head that really pop out incredibly. Mastermind Creations once again shows you how the hell to do some light piping, as those eyes can blaze. Admittedly, the sheer blackness can rob him of some detail under certain lighting conditions. It's hard to make out all those lovely rivets, and I kinda wish that they'd each individually been picked out with metal, but then again, that would probably also make him cost an extra $50 for all the man-hours. Also, you'll notice that this head can actually accommodate the visor that didn't really work on the first Night Morpher. I'm leaving it on, partly to make him a little bit less Prime-like so it's easier to get him across as like some kind of original locomotive character on a classic shelf, and also, once again, to just show off how the hell these eyes are so good at doing what they do. But here's what it looks like without the visor on. There you go. I'm sure your life's been enriched. To take advantage of Annihilator's newly ball-jointed neck and improved ability to use the visor, he actually comes with an alternate head for the original Night Morpher with the same ball jointing and divots added to the sides of the temples. Swapping it is a little bit tricky because you have to do a bit of unscrewing and sort of know how to disassemble and reassemble that part of the toy. It didn't take me too long to figure out, but it's a bit tricky. You gotta remember that there's a larger peg and a smaller peg on either side of the assembly you're pulling apart. Believe in the asymmetry. Once it's in place, you've got a much improved noggin for your Night Morpher commander, and this one can just join some trophy wall, or if you're really morbid, you can sleep with it at night. As you can see, there are some color differences. I don't think I really need to point them all out, they're quite apparent. As I said before, Commander has a more varied placing of colors, but Annihilator has a lot more of the smaller details picked out. Though I guess it's worth mentioning that his little yellow belt buckle is just completely gone on him. There are also some color differences in their matrices, as can be seen here. Annihilator's is made to resemble the dead matrix with the darker core, because he is born of the impurity of one's ember. Ember. The impurity of one's ember. But you know, these color differences, they're really the lowest priority thing to point out on these guys. The main reason why the Annihilator is worth your consideration is because of the sheer number of structural improvements he bears. The ball-jointed neck is just the tip of the mountain, and it's the only one that can carry down to the Commander. Though if a re-release of the Commander happens, I would highly recommend him if you prefer Prime colors, because let me tell you, the Annihilator has fixed almost everything. Okay, so the head, this is the really obvious one, now we know about it. The shoulders, look at this, alright, these, they still ratchet, but these are way less frighteningly tight than the original shoulders. The thing about the shoulders, though, is that on mine, there is still one little problem. This one's a lot looser than this one, even down to the point of the frightening click joint. This one does click into place when you slide it forward, but this one does so far more solidly. On the bright side, it's a lot easier to pop this solid one out of the click spot, so hopefully that means that the inner tabs won't snap off like on my Commander. Similarly, the elbow joints are also a lot more fluid to move. I believe that Mastermind Creations mentioned that they were using a lot more ABS plastic construction on this guy, and it really is helping whatever they're doing. The ratchet joints are still tight, but a lot simpler to move left and right. It's really well done how they've smoothened the joints without making them floppy. The joints in the legs were also gifted with a much smoother, but still tight and ratchety feel, and that's good to see. This was a good design that was marred just by a few little structural unintegrities, and many of those have been fixed. The wobbly wheels on the hips are also much tighter now, although in this case this might actually almost be to its detriment. They are extremely tight to the point of creaking. I believe it's this one. I actually got a little bit frightened moving it around just because it was making so much noise. But it's survived several transformations, so it's not breaking, so the materials seem to be good. It's just a little bit frightening to mess with at first. One of the biggest improvements would be the hand swap feature. These are no longer on very fragile, kind of teeth-style plugs. These ones are just full-on peg and holes, way better than on the Commander. Only problem I've got is that this particular alternate hand is very loose in there. It comes out extremely easily when it's holding the lance. On the bright side, since it's just a simple peg and hole, I just have to thicken this peg and all will be well. It's also worth noting that this part of the transformation is a lot less scary to do on this guy. On the Commander, it's terrifyingly tight, and it feels like you might rip the toy in half before you move the leg. Here, it moves a lot more like a mainstream toy. It's still tight, but it's a lot less resistive to your efforts. Resistant? Well, the Annihilator's quote-unquote trailer can open up just like the Commander's, and you can still arm him up with that lovely cannon-armed, rocket-packing melee mode of the original. The lance had a surprising improvement that I wasn't expecting at all. Basically, there's a cap to protect the thin bit at the top. This little cap can loosely balance inside one of the many portholes left behind, and goes a long way to increase my confidence in the long-term durability of the toy. Everything else pegs into place just as solidly as before. And he looks pretty badass in a mimicry of the Commander's fully armed mode. And here, let me just illustrate to you this thing, right? So when you push it in, it goes all the way in, so you can put a cap on top. This one, there's a bit sticking out the top, and it's just not quite as cool. This part has never really come under danger, but I've always felt like something could go wrong and it could get snapped off. So hey, that's pretty damn cool. More or less, this guy's just like the Commander, and oh, what's that? Oh, you see a sword? There's this, oh, well, look at that. Oh, I wonder if I should show you what that looks like in his hands. Plugging into a snug hole beneath the mortar cannon, darkness, the sword of destruction, can be unleashed. It kind of reminds me of one of Kaiser's swords, actually. The evil bat-like guard and the dark center of the blade give it an incredibly ominous appearance. It's not gigantically long, but it's kind of practically medium length. And you know, the only thing that can make a black, glowing red eyes locomotive robot with copper and brass detailing even cooler is to give him a sword. But you cry out, with this additional melee weapon, there's no way he can continue carrying all his accessories on him. Mastermind Creations says to thee, nay! All those superfluous holes under the trailer have come into use as you can store 2 holster accessories within them. The round one works with the lance. You just plug it into any of the screw holes on Annihilator's back and slide her in. While it looks cool to have a giant pointy thing sticking off your hip, I would recommend actually retracting it as far as you can go and plugging in the little round cap bit. This is just mostly to avoid any kind of unfortunate accidents in case the toy tips over on your shelf or some such. Also, this kind of makes it a bit more compact, and I would actually see this as how the dude would carry his lance around, like, folded up like this so that he can only unleash it when he needs to. But what if you want to put the sword back there? And why does he drive my autofocus crazy? There's a clamp-style holster you can also stick back there. Unfortunately, you don't slide the sword in, but you instead clip it in, which I find a little bit terrifying, even though everything on this toy so far has felt dead solid. Oh, and by the way, if you want to have both melee weapons on his back, you totally can do that as well. What makes me scared about this clamp is it's not so much that you have to, clip it in, it's more so getting it back out. It's not like it's broken so far, but the way that you have to basically bend the clamp and then pry the sword loose, you really gotta leverage this thing out. It makes me uncomfortable, basically. There, you gotta pull this bit back, and then you got this thing out. This solution, it's cool, but I just wish it didn't rely so much on terrifying forces at work. And I've looked at this, the blade doesn't disassemble, and there's no way you could slide it in through this way or this way. So, it's a cool idea, and I like the way it looks once it's in there. It's just getting it out that's the tricky part. And I don't really see a better way they could have done it with this style, unless there were, like, joints involved in here. That would have added extra tolerance issues, and blah, blah, blah. Hopefully this thing is just tough like the Fans Project Defender sword, and all this stuff can just take it, like it's that really rough, durable plastic. Seriously, you're like, gah! And then you want to get it back out, and you're like, oh god! Yeah, that's how I feel. Mastermind Creations went above and beyond in implementing nearly every single nitpick I have heard and thought of myself about the Night Morpher Commander. This is more than just a cool black repaint with a new sword. This is a full-on second attempt at a pretty cool design. If you were on the fence about the Night Morpher and were kind of interested in it, this is a perfect way to get into picking this guy up. If you're not the kind of person who's interested in these third-party curiosities, then you may want to back away for now. But if you're into this kind of thing, Mastermind Creations has finally stepped up onto the same level as Perfect Effect and TF Club. If they can maintain this level of quality, they are definitely up there in the upper echelon of third-party groups. And I'm really glad about it, because I felt bad for them after the stuff that happened with the Night Morpher Commander. It was a great toy, a really ambitious way to step into the field, and it's a shame that its structural problems really held it back. The Annihilator fixes everything, and I'd highly recommend it if you were already thinking about picking this thing up. It's also got some pretty interesting fiction going on. Check out Mastermind Creations' blog for the continuing story of Annihilator, Ultra, the Commander, Cyclops, and CG wallpapers to go with all of those entries. This is Internet Personality Vangelus, and I'm so happy to have this design in a far more improved form. In fact, I think I'm just gonna stare into those eyes a little bit longer. Ooh, yeah. Glow for me, baby. Glow hard.